He only wanted to grab a snack. But within seconds of walking into a small-town store, a black man is confronted, accused, and threatened with the police for nothing more than existing. The store owner demands he leave, convinced he doesn't belong. He says nothing, just walks out. But minutes later, she hears sirens and sees him again. Only this time, he's not a shopper. He's the commanding officer of a federal SWAT team, leading a secret investigation into her for racial profiling. What happens next will shock the entire town and expose a pattern she thought she'd hidden forever. If you've ever witnessed or experienced bias in plain sight, this story is for you. Drop a comment if you think he handled it with power. It was the kind of store where the floor gleamed too much and the music tried a little too hard to sound effortless. Polished shelves, soft lighting, everything positioned just right, like even air had to ask permission to move. The man stepped in quietly. No big entrance, no dramatic pause in the doorway. He just walked in like any other customer might, hands tucked loosely in his jacket pockets, posture relaxed, eyes scanning the displays. A normal visit, but the owner didn't see normal. She looked up from the counter, eyes narrowing slightly. Not enough to be obvious. Just that subtle shift, that microscopic pause, the kind that says, "You don't belong here," even if the mouth stays shut. He pretended not to notice, or maybe he really didn't care. Hard to tell. He walked over to a row of leather wallets near the back, picked one up, turned it over in his hands. Nothing suspicious about it. Still, her eyes stayed on him. He felt it, of course. People like him usually do. That quiet pressure in the air, like someone's trying to catch you doing something before you've even done it. She moved from behind the counter, slowly, purposefully. No words yet, just close enough to make her presence known. He glanced up briefly, met her gaze, then looked back down at the wallet. "I'm just browsing," he said, voice calm, gentle even. She didn't answer, didn't smile, just nodded stiffly and folded her arms. Funny how loud silence can be. He wandered to the next shelf. High-end cufflinks displayed under a thin glass cover. Nothing extravagant, just neatly arranged rows of polished metal, each pair priced like rent. The store owner shadowed him now, not directly beside him, not quite, but always hovering. She kept hiding things that didn't need tidying, straightening things already straight. Her presence wasn't accidental. He glanced her way again. Still calm, still saying nothing. Finally, he broke the silence. "These made in the city?" he asked, tapping a pair with a small American flag etched in silver. She stiffened, not at the question, at the fact he'd spoken at all. "They're handcrafted," she said, clipped. "Limited edition." "Ah," he nodded, setting them down carefully. "Nice work. Pricey, though." Another pause. She studied him like she was trying to read a warning label. Then she stepped in closer. "Sir," she said sharply, "I'm going to need you to either buy something or leave." He blinked. "Excuse me? You've been standing there for several minutes. You're making me uncomfortable." He tilted his head, just slightly. "Uncomfortable," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "I don't want to escalate this," she added quickly, "but I will call the police if I feel threatened." He took a slow breath, no sudden moves. "All I did was ask a question." Her hand moved toward the phone behind the counter, not touching it yet, but close. "Then maybe it's time to move along." Quietly. A few shoppers nearby looked up, then just as quickly looked away. Eyes flickered, then dropped. No one said a word. He stared at her a moment longer, studying, not angry. Then without another word, he turned and walked calmly toward the door. She let out a breath. Maybe she thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The chime above the door gave a little jingle as he stepped outside. The kind of cheerful sound that didn't match the mood inside the shop just seconds earlier. He paused on the sidewalk, not in a dramatic way, just enough to collect himself. He looked left, then right. The street buzzed around him like normal. Cars rolled by. A cyclist zipped past, head down, nothing out of place. To the world, it was just another afternoon. Inside the shop, the owner watched him through the glass. Her arms were still folded tight across her chest, like a shield she didn't quite know how to put down. He didn't glare back. He didn't flip her off or shout or make a scene. He just existed, calmly, quietly, and that perhaps unsettled her even more. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. Nothing rushed. He thumbed the screen, made a call, and waited. Someone picked up fast. He didn't waste time on greetings. "Yeah," he said, voice lowered but clear. "Confirmed. Store's active. Pattern matches the last 2 incidents. We've got enough now." A pause, then "Send the team." "Standard approach. Let's keep it clean." He ended the call and tucked the phone back into his jacket. His expression didn't change. Not even a flicker of smugness. Just a calm man doing what needed to be done. Behind him, the shop door was still ajar. A breeze nudged it open just a bit further, like the store itself wasn't sure whether to invite him back or shove him away. He turned and looked at it one last time. Then he stepped to the side, leaned casually against a parking meter, and waited. He didn't pace, didn't fidget, just stood there like a man waiting for a bus, or maybe a late friend. His hands were tucked into his jacket again, one thumb casually hooked around the edge of his belt. But beneath that stillness was a different kind of energy, measured, focused, waiting to shift. From the other side of the window, the store owner peeked again. Her arms were still crossed, but now she seemed uncertain. Maybe she was wondering why he was still there, why he hadn't walked away completely. He noticed. Of course he did. Another vibration in his pocket. He pulled the phone out, answered without hesitation. "This is Cross," he said, low and clipped. "Yeah, street's quiet. Visibility's high but manageable. No immediate crowd buildup." A short pause. "ETA?" he asked, his eyes flicking briefly toward the corner of the street. Whoever was on the other end gave him a number he liked. His expression didn't change, but something about the way he stood seemed to sharpen. "Good," he said. "No lights, no sirens. Enter from the east and split by twos. Stay in plain gear until I give the go." Another short beat. Then, "Yeah." She made contact, initiated confrontation within 2 minutes of entry. Coded language, indirect threat. No one intervened. He glanced at the bystanders, still coming and going, oblivious. "She's textbook." He ended the call and slipped the phone away again. A few feet down the sidewalk, a teenager with headphones walked by, glanced at him, then at the store, then back again. Like something didn't quite add up. He didn't say a word, just gave a small nod, barely noticeable. It wasn't for the kid, it was for the team. They were close. The store owner stood near the window now, pretending to rearrange a row of gift boxes that had already been perfectly arranged. Her eyes kept darting back to the man outside. He hadn't moved much, just leaned there, calm as ever. And that calmness, it started to feel less harmless and more intentional. A customer came in, middle-aged man, business casual, Bluetooth in one ear. She greeted him quickly, overly cheerful, trying to mask whatever tension was rising inside her. "Welcome, let me know if you need help," she said a bit too brightly. She turned back to the window. Then she noticed something. 2 men dressed in casual clothes, cargo pants, hoodies, walked past the front of the store and stopped a few yards down. They weren't together, but they both glanced toward her window at the same moment. Subtle, precise. She felt her throat tighten. A woman in jeans and a windbreaker strolled in from the other direction, pausing near the newspaper box. She didn't look like much, but her eyes, they locked briefly with the man leaning by the parking meter. That was the moment it clicked. Something was happening, but there were no flashing lights, no sirens, no shouting, just a shifting energy. The man outside, he finally straightened. Not aggressively, not loudly, but it was the kind of movement that changed everything. He adjusted his jacket, stepped forward, and walked, slowly, back toward the front door. She instinctively reached for the counter again, her hand brushing the phone. He opened the door. This time he didn't say anything, And this time, he didn't come alone. The bell above the shop door jingled again, cheerful, clueless. The same sound as before, but this time the atmosphere shattered. He stepped inside, calm, collected. Still that steady look on his face, but behind him, the glass door didn't close all the way. It stayed slightly ajar, just long enough for two others to follow. They entered without fanfare. No shouting, no badges flashed, no drawn weapons, just a quiet confidence that filled the room faster than noise ever could. The store owner straightened so fast she nearly knocked over the display tray. "Can I help you?" Her voice wobbled on the last word. He glanced at the two agents beside him. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a wire tucked behind his ear, gave a small nod. Then he turned back to her. "You remember me?" he asked. She hesitated. "You were just in here. I asked you to leave, yes, because, well, you were making customers uneasy." "Right," he said softly, like he was repeating a note for later. "And you mentioned calling the police, just to be safe." I never actually called them," she stammered. "I didn't say you did anything illegal. I was just following store policy." The taller agent beside him stepped forward. "We've reviewed multiple incidents here, matching the same pattern: verbal confrontation, biased assumptions, racial targeting." Her eyes widened. "What is this?" That's when he reached into his jacket and pulled out his badge. No hesitation. Just enough movement to catch the light. "Commander Elijah Cross, Metro SWAT. You're under federal investigation for racial profiling in collaboration with the Civil Rights Division." The room went dead quiet. Not even the jingle above the door dared to ring again. For a moment, she didn't speak. Her eyes stayed glued to the badge like it couldn't be real. Like maybe if she blinked long enough, the whole thing would dissolve into nothing. But it didn't. Commander Elijah Cross stood firm, watching her with the patience of someone who'd seen this play out before. Too many times, probably. "Investigation?" she finally whispered, backing up a step. Her hand reached behind her, fumbling along the counter, searching for something. A sense of control, maybe. Elijah didn't move. The two plainclothes agents behind him flanked out quietly, sealing off the sides of the store. One positioned near the front entrance, the other casually locked the side door with a quiet click. The customer with the Bluetooth headset, who'd been browsing near the back, suddenly paused. He looked up, eyes flicking between faces, sensing the shift. "Ma'am," Elijah said, his voice steady but unmistakably in command. "You are not under arrest yet, but you are being recorded, and at this moment, every word you say is part of a federal inquiry." She froze. Her fingers hovered near the landline phone, unsure whether to pick it up or pretend she'd never touched it. I didn't mean anything by what I said earlier," she blurted out, now visibly sweating. "It wasn't about race. It was just, he looked suspicious. I've had problems before. I was just being careful." Elijah tilted his head. "Suspicious how?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No words came. One of the agents calmly pulled out a small tablet and began playing back audio, her voice clear as day, making the veiled threats, saying, "People like you," saying, "Don't make trouble." And in the background, silence, because no trouble had ever been made until now. The air in the store felt thicker now, heavier. She kept glancing nervously at the phone, like she might be able to dial a lifeline, but she knew better. Her options were shrinking by the second. The agent with the tablet didn't rush. He moved with quiet precision, flipping through the recordings. The screen flickered with the transcript of their conversation, her words, his responses, everything. "Here," he said, pointing to a timestamp. He slid the tablet toward her. "This is where you mentioned calling the police." Before he'd even spoken a word, she swallowed hard, eyes darting from the tablet to Elijah, who hadn't moved. His gaze was still steady, but there was a sharpness to it now, a quiet determination that seemed to fill the whole space. I wasn't," she started, her voice trembling, but she faltered before she could finish. Elijah crossed his arms, giving her space to collect herself, but the silence stretched thin. "This isn't about being careful anymore," he said, his voice still low. "This is about a pattern of discrimination. And right now, your behavior is on record." One of the agents stepped forward. "We've also spoken to several other customers, people who were in here before, during, and after your interactions with him. They've confirmed similar experiences." Her face drained of color. "Did you know," Elijah continued, voice still calm, "that racial profiling is a federal offense and that it carries a much heavier penalty than anything you're trying to pin on him?" She shook her head, mumbling under her breath, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." The agent slid the tablet back into his bag. "It's already gone this far." Elijah didn't need to say anything else. The weight of the truth was enough. The room was still, almost too still, the kind of quiet that felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to break it. The store owner, now pale and visibly shaking, didn't say anything more. Her hands were gripped tightly around the counter's edge, knuckles white. She glanced at the door as if hoping someone, anyone, might walk in and make all of this go away. But no one did. The few customers still lingering in the shop shuffled nervously, as if waiting for the storm to hit. Elijah didn't speak, didn't need to. His eyes stayed locked on her, reading her movements, catching every small shift. It wasn't about what she said now, it was about the weight of what had already been done, and no amount of apology was going to undo that. One of the agents near the door made a soft gesture, signaling to Elijah that the team was in position. The store's exits were locked. The surrounding area was secure. Everything was set. "Ma'am," Elijah said finally, his voice just loud enough to carry through the thick silence, "you've had your chance to explain. Now we're going to finish this. The next steps are out of your hands." Her eyes darted between the agents and Elijah, her breathing shallow. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she let out a shaky breath, too caught up in the realization that things had gone way beyond her control. Elijah turned toward the door, and the agents followed without a word. As they left, he glanced back one last time. The store owner stood frozen, her gaze locked on the ground. The storm wasn't coming. It had already arrived. By the time they stepped outside, the quiet was deafening. The early morning sun had already started to warm the pavement, but the cool tension still hung in the air, like it hadn't yet decided whether to clear or linger. Elijah stood on the sidewalk, watching the agents spread out. No sirens, no chaos, just the soft shuffle of boots against the concrete as his team moved into position. They were good at their jobs, efficient, and he had no doubt they'd handle things from here. But the reality of it, it wasn't over. Not for the store owner, not for the system, not for him. He pulled his phone from his pocket and checked the incoming messages. Status updates, a few inquiries, and then a quick message from the department. He didn't need to read it again to know what it said. The paperwork was going to be a mountain. And even with all the evidence in place, the fight was far from over. As the rest of his team finalized their reports, he glanced back at the store. Through the window, he could still see her, standing behind the counter, her back to the door, looking small in a way that only isolation could make you feel. The door opened again, and a different customer walked in. No hesitation, no drama. They greeted each other like nothing had happened, like they didn't know the whole store had just been under federal investigation, like she wasn't still standing there, trying to figure out where her life had gone off course. Elijah stepped away from the curb and turned toward his vehicle. He knew he couldn't change it.